Fitness Myths video number 3. Vegan diets are healthier than non-vegan diets. Oh boy, the triggering is upon us.
Hey, what is up, guys? So today we're going to be talking about Dr. Mike, otherwise known as Mike Israetel, from the YouTube channel Renaissance Periodization, and his claim that vegan diets are not healthier than non-vegan diets. To be clear, out of all of the big names in the fitness community, I respect Mike Israetel the most, given his usual scientific approach to training, as opposed to the flashy bro science that is normally propagated throughout the fitness sphere. I especially enjoyed his debate with Greg Doucette, in which he made it very clear that Greg basically doesn't have any idea what he's talking about. Mike holds a PhD in sport physiology, so he isn't your usual bro scientist when it comes to fitness, and it is because of this that I find great value in his content related to training. He has even debated vegan ethics before. One of his vegan debates with Dr. Avi was quite interesting, although you will see that the logical structure of his ethical system led to quite absurd conclusions. I'll link that debate below if you'd like to watch. Anyway, let's get into Mike's video and see how he justifies the claim that vegan diets are not healthier than non-vegan diets.
Hey folks, Dr. Mike Israetel here for Renaissance Periodization. Fitness Myths video number 3. Vegan diets are healthier than non-vegan diets. Oh boy, the triggering is upon us. We'll talk about the claim itself. We're talking about why it's probably wrong, where the grains of truth are, and what the take-home message actually is. So the claim here is that a vegan diet is by design more healthy because it is vegan than pretty much any omnivorous diet where you eat animal as well as plant products. And the other sort of implication of this myth or this idea is that if you're really serious about getting healthy and losing fat, you'll go vegan.
All right, guys. So just to be clear, I am not one of those vegans that think that a vegan diet is necessarily healthier than a non-vegan diet. Vegans do exist who believe this, but I would think they're quite scarce. Of course, if somebody just consumes strictly vegan chips and cookies within their diet, along with no supplements, and you compare that specific diet to a non-vegan whose diet is comprised of whole plant-based foods with the addition of 2 servings of meat per week, I mean, obviously, the non-vegan diet is going to be healthier. I don't think I need to cite any data in this moment to make that clear. Of course, a vegan diet is not necessarily healthier than a non-vegan diet. Both vegan diets and non-vegan diets can be designed in a more or less healthier way. And just another thing, what we define the word healthy to mean can be quite vague at times, but I am not one of those vegans who think that if you're not vegan, it is impossible to be healthy. Surely we understand that a non-vegan diet in which the fiber is high and the antioxidants are high and other sort of phytonutrients, while saturated fat and cholesterol are low, is a non-vegan diet we would consider healthy. Just as an example, picture a diet in which a person is consuming most of their calories from whole plant-based foods, but once a week they have 1 serving of chicken breasts. It's not like animal products such as chicken breasts are so unhealthy that having 1 serving of chicken breasts per week while the rest of your diet is whole plant-based foods is going to make your diet or the person unhealthy. Unethical, yes. Unhealthy, no. So I just wanted to make it clear before we move on that I am not one of those vegans who think that a vegan diet is necessarily healthier than a non-vegan diet, and that a non-vegan diet cannot be healthy, period. Of course, the more important question here is going to be what diet is more likely to be healthier, a quote healthy vegan diet or a quote healthy omnivorous diet. Because as we'll see in Mike's video, he believes that of course a vegan diet that is properly planned and minimally processed is going to be healthier than a very processed and not health conscious non-vegan diet, but he does not believe that a minimally processed healthy vegan diet is going to be healthier than a minimally processed healthy non-vegan diet. Of course, this calls into question data concerning vegans who pursue healthy lifestyles and omnivores pursuing healthy lifestyles. This data will be gone into, but before we do that, let's take a look at what else Mike has to say.
So it turns out that the nutrition literature is pretty vast. Lots of comparisons between vegan diets and diets that have animal products in them. And when both diets are healthy, there are really no differences between vegan diets and non-vegan diets. Now, a lot of early literature compared vegan diet, which was mostly healthy, whole, unprocessed foods, compared to the standard Western diet, which is like, you know, a turkey sandwich for lunch, potato chips as a snack, and I had to work late, so Burger King for dinner. Like, lots of diets are better than that diet, maybe all diets. So it turns out when both diets are healthy, vegan diets are no more healthy on average than health-conscious diets designed with some animal products in them.
So if you look at the Adventist Health Study 2, we'll see that this study involved 73,308 health-conscious participants with the goal of evaluating an association between vegetarian dietary patterns and mortality. All of these participants were broken up into 5 dietary pattern groups, which were non-vegetarians, semi-vegetarians, pesco-vegetarians, lacto-ovo-vegetarians, and vegans. This paper also controlled for important demographic and lifestyle confounding factors like sex, race, geographic region, personal income, educational level, marital status, smoking, alcohol use, exercise, sleep, menopausal status of women, hormone therapy in postmenopausal women, dietary energy, and BMI. What they found was that vegetarian diets were associated with lower all-cause mortality, with some reductions in cause-specific mortality, and the subset of vegetarians that were vegan had a significantly reduced risk in both sexes combined for all-cause mortality, ischemic heart disease mortality, and cardiovascular disease mortality. And here's a clip from Nutrivore covering the results a little more in depth.
And when both diets are healthy, there are really no differences between vegan diets and non-vegan diets. Now, a lot of early literature compared vegan diets.
I mean, like if we're talking about health outcomes, if we take the Seventh-day Adventists, so the Adventist Health Study 2, for example, if we aggregate all of the vegetarian diets, we see a statistically significant reduction in risk in all-cause mortality with 7 years of follow-up compared to just a straight omnivorous diet, right? And then when we actually fractionate it into different types of vegetarianism, we see this stepwise reduction in risk as we eschew more and more animal products, with the sole exception of fish. Pesco-vegetarian diets seem to be largely non-inferior to vegan diets. But other than that, other than with the sole exception of fish, we see a stepwise reduction in risk as you eschew animal products from the diet. I don't think that's very controversial.
So just from this paper alone, with the exception of health-conscious pesco-vegetarians who eat fish, it is pretty reasonable to think that a health-conscious vegan is going to be healthier than a health-conscious omnivore.
So the reality here is vegan diets are for sure healthier if they're healthy vegan diets than just unhealthy regular eating. But if you make the other comparison diet omnivorous, it's still healthy, like something like a bodybuilder would eat, or CrossFitter, or just some very health-conscious person. You know, like basically the claim is like if you have a nice ocean-caught salmon, some brown rice, and some veggies, and a slice of fruit, that plate is less healthy than the same plate, except the salmon is replaced with like a tofu dog that vegans would eat. That's just not true. It's just not true.
So I will say here that I don't think it is clear that if you took the plate Mike postulated and had 2 versions where one contained all plant-based food except one contained tofu and the other contained fish, that both plates would be equally healthy. And let's be clear, making the claim that one plate is healthier than the other plate does not mean that the less healthy plate is unhealthy, just less healthy than the more healthy plate. So I can imagine that if fish were replaced with something, say like legumes or tofu, it could be argued that the plate with either of these 2 plant foods could be viewed as healthier due to the increased fiber and decreased saturated fat and cholesterol than the option which includes fish, which would hence have reduced fiber and increased saturated fat and cholesterol. Now, of course, one serving of fish doesn't have a crazy amount of saturated fat and cholesterol, but again, if we're going to go with which option is just healthier, I think it is fairly reasonable to say replacing fish with legumes would be healthier. Here's an interesting randomized control trial which, although it doesn't include fish, I still find it relevant to cover, given I'm sure Mike would also say that the plate gone over with chicken breast rather than fish would also not be less healthy than the plate if it had tofu or legumes. This paper compared the effects of red meat, white meat, and non-meat protein sources on the atherogenic lipoprotein measures in the context of low compared with high saturated fat intake. They ended up looking at increase in LDL cholesterol, which we know when increased can cause cardiovascular disease, and apolipoprotein, which is protein which allows LDLs to attach to specific receptors on the surface of cells. They found that both of these were higher in groups consuming red or white meat compared to the non-meat group. So here is just more evidence suggesting that replacing a meal which includes mostly whole plant-based foods plus a meat product with a meal that has just whole plant-based foods might be healthier.
And when I was writing this slide, it was like grains of truth. And then I had to just talk more smack because unfortunately it leads into the next thing. Used to be back in the 80s and 90s when veganism first started its ascension in the Western world, there were basically 0 vegan products out on the shelves. Almost anything processed was going to have animal products in it. which is why vegans typically ate a diet of lots of fruits and veggies, lots of whole grains, and minimally processed vegan protein sources. Almost no junk food, almost no snacks. Their idea of snacks was like, oh, I'm just snacking on some nuts, you know, and you're like, oh, that's kind of a boring snack. And the thing is, that's back when vegans were super lean and super healthy. As veganism became more popular, corporations decided vegans probably want to eat tasty foods. They made vegan foods, but made them ultra processed and super palatable, very, very tasty. And guess what? Those corporations weren't wrong. Vegans really do want that stuff. And it turns out that that led to a revolution in the fraction of vegan foods that were now junk foods, essentially. And vegan junk food is such a big deal. People go way out of their way to get it. Now they don't have to because it's in every store. You blink your eyes and there it is. That's maybe half of the entire Whole Foods store. Is that it's mild exaggeration, but vegan junk food. I used to get these brownie cookies at Whole Foods back when I lived in Philadelphia, and they were like, 100% vegan right on there. I couldn't tell if shit was vegan. It was fucking so good. It had loads of oil and fat and delicious sugar, all of it vegan. But you know what I'm saying? Your boy wasn't eating 18 of these motherfucking things every day because that would have been enormous and super unhealthy if that was the case. So the days of vegans de facto having to eat healthy foods are over and gone. Which means nowadays, if you say, well, I'm going to diet to lose weight and become healthier, and I know I'm very serious about it, I'm going to turn vegan, that is a guarantee of nothing nowadays. And it's just a guarantee that your junk food will look different and maybe cost a little bit more, and that's it.
Yes, I agree that going vegan in the past did basically require you to eat healthy because there was a lack of vegan junk food items, and therefore you really only had whole plant-based foods to go off of in your dietary pursuit. And now that we have vegan junk food readily available, it is reasonable to say that going vegan in the 21st century, at least, you know, in a developed country where there's junk food, you don't really know for sure if a person is going to be consuming high amounts of whole plant-based foods. They can just go out of their way and have a lot of very processed stuff and not consume a very healthy diet. And therefore, yes, a vegan diet is not necessarily a guarantee of health in the modern world.
So if you want to go more vegan, that's totally fine. If you want to go completely vegan, that's totally fine. But it shouldn't be for your health because veganism is not a guarantee of health or even a marginal increase in health. It should be for things like ethics, right?
All right, as stated earlier, yes, going vegan is not a guarantee of health, but I do think one can reasonably say it is a guarantee of superior health relative to your average healthy non-vegan diet, assuming you properly plan it and consume a vegan diet in a healthy fashion instead. I say average healthy non-vegan diet because of course I'm aware that one can produce a non-vegan diet which likely wouldn't result in better health outcomes than a healthy vegan diet. Just take the example gone over earlier in which a person consumes primarily whole plant-based foods along with 1 serving of chicken breast per week, or even some really low 1/4 of a serving of chicken breast per week. Technically, this diet is not vegan, but would likely not result in worse health outcomes than the vegan diet.
At the end of the day, you can do almost any diet as far as macro composition or sourcing in a healthy way as long as you stick to minimally processed healthy ingredients and stay in calorie balance and eat enough proteins, carbs, and fats to keep you upright, which is very few of any of them. So the rest can come from, you can eat a low protein, high carb, low fat diet, high protein, low carb, high fat diet, and 50 other permutations, no problem, because your body's super adaptable as long as you get very bare minima. And most of the foods are from largely unprocessed healthy sources and you don't overeat on calories. Man, that's really like 90% of health right there.
So this part of Mike's video is a little bit odd. It seems like he thinks you can do almost any diet and be healthy so long as you lower the amount of processed foods and have an appropriate calorie balance where you don't overeat. He claims this is basically 90% of health. If you check out this paper, it does not seem to be the case that lowering processed food and achieving an optimal balance of calories and macronutrients is most of health. Here is one more clip of Nutrivore going into the study, and I'll put up screenshots of what he's specifically talking about as he's talking about them.
Low carb, high fat diet, and 50 other permutations, no problem, because your body's super adaptable as long as you get very bare minima, and most of the foods are from largely unprocessed healthy sources, and you don't overeat on calories. Man, that's really like 90% of health right there.
It really does seem like he's one of these people who just thinks that diet-disease relationships just cash out into calorie balance. It's like, no, bud. We have literal analyses like where we see calories going down as meat consumption goes up, and we see hypertension going down, we see type 2 diabetes going down, we see fruits and vegetables are the same, We see fish are the same, eggs are the same, chicken is largely the same, like all other dietary exposures, physical activity is the same, smoking is the same. Like all of these other exposures that we typically consider to be confounding, they're all balanced across the quantiles of intake. We see meat go up as like a univariate exposure. It's just going up and everything else is held largely constant. And we still see that risk goes up. So clearly there are diet disease relationships, or clearly there's plausibility for the idea that there are diet disease relationships that are irrespective of energy balance. Because we also see that daily calories go down as meat goes up in these analyses too. And they control for calories on top of that. Like they include them in the multivariate adjustment models. So it's like, there are certainly foods that increase your risk independent of the calories they provide.
You will continue to hear claims in the next year, 3 years, 5 years about veganism being healthier. The number one source of those claims are vegans that with all due good intention really do believe vegan diets are healthier, but they're not so keen on making sure they're not wrong. They don't do a lot of red teaming themselves, because they're so dedicated to pushing veganism as much as possible. If there's remotely evidence for the fact that veganism could be healthier, they're going with it. They're advocating for it because anything that can lead to less animal suffering, generally vegans like. My view is a little bit more long view than that. I think as an advocacy group, you shouldn't say things that aren't true, because then you get into a situation where people can say, hey, you lied to me once. Why should I believe anything you say now? It's a bad look. So I think as far as vegan advocacy, the health thing should be dropped altogether. And you should just focus on the ethics of, pigs suffer and they're incredible pain and there's fucking millions of them dying all the time. And that's fucking terrible. This is good enough reason to go vegan. We don't have to make up claims about health, which is just categorically false.
So I will say there definitely are vegans out there who would go out of their way to lie about health claims just to save animals. And these vegans do exist, and I've actually met them personally. And I don't think that we should be exaggerating health claims because of basically what Mike said. If you end up lying to somebody about health claims and they end up finding out, they will have a higher chance to not believe you in the future because you literally lied to them. I mean, the vegan movement has enough science on its side as it is, so why would we end up lying to get our point across, right? I don't think that the health thing should be dropped altogether. I think there's really good reasons to talk about health with people who maybe don't care about animals but care about their health. And this way we can use health as a way to at least get them to lower their intake of animal products, hence lower their demand for animal products, hence lower the supply generated, hence lower the amount of suffering generated from their diet, which in their own head is mainly for their health, but we're still helping animals in doing this. But I will say that regardless of how healthy a vegan diet is, I choose to mostly talk about ethics with people when I'm on the streets or doing advocacy, because technically one can consume a healthy version of a non-vegan diet, but this healthy version of a non-vegan diet will not be an ethical vegan diet because it still involves paying for animals to be brutally murdered, commodified, and, all those terrible things that vegans just don't like. All right, guys, so that is the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. If you support my work and want to help make this work more possible, you can support me on Patreon. The link is in the description below, or you can become a YouTube member and make use of some of those amazing emojis I've, manufactured for you guys, which you guys know takes so many hours. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
Dude, even vegans don't get your weird, stupid wannabe sense of irony here. Who's your audience? Nobody gets these dumb jokes. Dude, even vegans don't get your weird, stupid